The starlight cantina floated in the darkness of space like a tiny bubble of light. It sat on orbital station 12, a place where ships from 100 different worlds came to rest, refuel, and forget their troubles. The cantina was famous across 3-star sectors, not for its drinks, though those were good enough, not for its food, though nobody had died from eating there in at least 2 years. No, the Starlight Cantina was famous because it was neutral ground. Every species in the Galactic Union knew the rules. You could be enemies outside. You could fight wars, steal cargo, and hunt each other across the stars. But inside the Starlight Cantina you behaved. You drank your drink, you ate your food, and you kept your weapons holstered. The cantina had stood for 300 years on this simple promise, and nobody wanted to be the one who broke it. Did not care about any of this. He just wanted a beer. The young cargo hauler had spent the last 16 hours flying through an asteroid belt that wanted to kill him. His ship, a beaten-up freighter called the Lucky Wind, had taken 7 hits from small rocks. Nothing serious, but enough to make his hands shake and his head hurt. When he finally docked at Station 12, he had only one thought in his mind: find a bar, order a drink, and sit down. Followed him through the station's crowded hallways. She was his co-pilot, his friend, and sometimes the only thing standing between him and a stupid decision. They had worked together for 3 years now, hauling cargo across the outer colonies. She was smart, quick, and had saved his life at least 4 times. He had lost count of how many times he had saved hers. "You look terrible," said as they walked. "I feel terrible," agreed. "Maybe you should sleep instead of drink. Maybe you should mind your own business." Laughed. She knew he did not mean it. They always talked like this. The Starlight Cantina was busy when they arrived. Dozens of aliens filled the large room, sitting at tables, standing at the bar, talking in languages that the universal translator turned into flat, emotionless words. Saw in one corner, their insect-like bodies clicking and moving in ways that made his skin crawl. He saw near the bar, their 4 arms mixing drinks with practiced ease. He saw creatures he could not name, species he had never met, all sharing the same space without killing each other. And then there were the humans, just him and as far as he could tell. Humans were still new to the galaxy. First contact had happened only 30 years ago, when a trading ship had stumbled upon Earth and discovered a species that had just barely figured out how to leave their own planet. The Galactic Union had studied humans carefully after that. They had measured them, tested them, and compiled reports that stretched for thousands of pages. The conclusion was simple: humans were not special. They were soft and weak. They could not survive in vacuum. They could not breathe underwater. They could not see in the dark or hear sounds beyond a narrow range. They lived short lives, barely a century if they were lucky. They got sick easily, broke easily, and died easily. By every measure the Union used, humans were one of the most fragile species ever discovered. And yet something about them made other species nervous. Found a table near the back of the cantina and sat down with a groan. His back hurt. His eyes hurt. Everything hurt. Sat across from him and waved at a serving drone, ordering drinks in the simple trade language that everyone in the Union understood. "They keep looking at us," said quietly. Glanced at the corner where the insect creatures sat. She was right. 3 of them were watching the humans with their large, compound eyes. Their antennae twitched nervously. "Let them look," said. "We are not doing anything wrong." They seem scared. Everyone seems scared of humans lately. I do not know why. We are not scary. Smiled at that. Maybe they read our history. That was probably it, thought. Human history was a long, bloody mess. Wars, plagues, disasters, and near extinctions filled every chapter. Humans had spent most of their existence trying to kill each other, and somehow they had survived anyway. The Union scholars who studied Earth always came away confused. How could such a weak species cause so much destruction? How could such short-lived creatures hold grudges for centuries? How could beings made of soft meat and brittle bone keep getting up after being knocked down? The drinks arrived. was brown and familiar, was blue and probably dangerous, but she liked trying new things. They raised their glasses in a small toast and drank. For a few minutes, everything was peaceful. The noise of the cantina washed over them like a warm wave. Felt his muscles begin to relax. Maybe this night would be okay after all. Maybe he would finish his drink, go back to the ship, and sleep for 12 hours straight. Then the door opened, and 3 warriors walked in. The cantina went quiet. Not silent, but quiet. Conversations dropped to whispers. Eyes turned toward the door and then quickly looked away. Even they who had been so interested in the humans now pressed themselves deeper into their corner. Had never seen a in person before. He had seen pictures and videos, of course. Everyone knew about They were the galaxy's most feared warriors, mercenaries who sold their strength to the highest bidder. They had fought in 1,000 wars and won most of them. Looking at them now, understood why. They were huge, nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and skin that looked like cracked volcanic rock. Their eyes glowed with a dull red light, and their mouths were filled with teeth that could bite through metal. They moved with the confidence of creatures who had never met anything they could not kill. And they were drunk, very, very drunk. "This," whispered, "is going to be bad." Nodded slowly. He had a feeling she was right. The 3 warriors stood at the entrance like mountains blocking the sun. The biggest one, a giant with cracks running across his stone-like face, looked around the cantina with slow, lazy eyes. His name would learn this later from the security reports. Right now, he only knew that this creature was trouble. His red eyes moved across the room, looking at each species in turn. The at the bar suddenly became very busy cleaning glasses. A group of small, furry creatures near the window paid their bill and left quickly. Even the serving drones seemed to move a little faster, a little more carefully. Then something changed in his face. His rocky features twisted into an expression that might have been a smile but looked more like a crack in a cliff. He made a sound, a clicking noise deep in his throat, and his 2 companions laughed. The universal translator in his ear tried to process the sound. What came out was a word so ugly, so hateful, that felt his stomach turn. "What did he say?" whispered. "Something bad about Sid, really bad." The 3 walked toward the table. Their heavy feet made the floor shake with each step. The cantina's other customers moved out of their way, pressing against walls and tables to avoid being touched. Nobody wanted to be noticed. Nobody wanted to be next. They tried to make themselves small. It did not work. Their bodies were long and thin, built for moving through tight spaces, not for hiding. Their compound eyes reflected the like broken mirrors, showing fear in 1,000 tiny images. "Little insects," said, his voice like rocks grinding together. "You sit in front of warriors and do not show respect." The oldest, a creature with gray patches on his shell that showed his age, raised his front legs in a gesture of peace. His translator made his voice sound calm, but his antennae were shaking. "Great warrior," they said, "we mean no disrespect. We did not see you enter. Please let us buy you drinks. Let us show our respect in this way." Leaned down, bringing his massive face close to the old. His breath smelled like burning metal. "You think drinks will fix this? You think you can pay for your insult with cheap alcohol?" "Please," they said. "We want no trouble. We are peaceful traders. We have nothing to fight with, nothing to fight for. Please let us go." "Let you go," laughed, and his companions laughed with him. "But we just got here, and I am bored. Space travel is so boring. I need something to make this night interesting." He grabbed the old by the middle section of his body where the shell was thinnest. The creature made a high, whistling sound of pain. His companions clicked in distress, but they did not move to help. They could not. They had given up fighting 1,000 years ago. They had evolved beyond violence, or so they believed. Now they were paying the price for that evolution. Watched all of this from his table. His beer sat forgotten in front of him, growing warm. Beside him was very still, barely breathing. Her hand had moved under the table, reaching for the utility knife on her belt. She said softly, "Do not do anything stupid." "I am not doing anything." "You have that look in your eyes." "What look?" "The look you get before you do something very stupid." She was right, knew she was right. His body was already reacting, already preparing for something his brain had not yet decided to do. His heart was beating faster. His hands wanted to become fists. Every muscle in his body was tightening, getting ready for action. This was the human curse. This was what the Galactic Union could not understand. Humans did not think before they acted. They felt. They reacted. Millions of years of evolution had built them to respond to threats before their conscious minds could catch up. Fight or flight, the old Earth scientists had called it. But for flight had never been an option. Not really. Not when someone was being hurt right in front of him. Through the old across the room. The insect creature flew through the air, his thin legs waving helplessly. He crashed into a table near, breaking it into pieces. His shell cracked with a sound like breaking glass. Blue blood began to leak from the wound. His companions screamed, not with their mouths but with their antennae, sending out waves of distress that the translator could not capture but could somehow feel. It was a sound of pure helplessness, pure fear. The other customers in the cantina looked away. The bartender was pressing the emergency button, calling for station security. Help would come eventually. In 4 minutes, maybe 5. That was the average response time on Station 12. A lot of pain could happen in 4 minutes. Walked toward the fallen, his companions following behind him. Their stone feet crushed the broken table into smaller pieces. They were laughing, enjoying themselves. This was entertainment for them. This was fun. Stood up. "Oh no," said. "I cannot just sit here." "Yes, you can. You can definitely just sit here. That is exactly what you should do." "They will kill him. And they will kill you too. Look at them. They are warriors. You are a cargo pilot. You cannot fight them." "Probably not," agreed. But he was already walking toward, his feet moving before his brain could stop them. Behind him, he heard swear in Korean, using words that would have made her grandmother faint. Then he heard her stand up and follow him. Some things you could not do alone. Some things you should not do at all. But humans did them anyway. That was what made them human. Stop 3 meters away from. This close, the warrior was even more terrifying. His body was like a wall of dark stone, covered in scars that told stories of battles could not imagine. His 4 arms hung at his sides like weapons waiting to be used. His red eyes glowed with a light that came from somewhere deep inside his skull. The cantina was silent now. Everyone was watching. Even the injured on the floor had stopped moving, his compound eyes fixed on the human who had just done something incredibly foolish. "Hey," said, his voice was steady, which surprised him. "Leave them alone." Turned slowly like a mountain shifting. He looked down at with an expression that was hard to read. Confusion, maybe, or amusement, or both. "What did you say, little creature?" "I said leave them alone. They have done nothing to you." "They insulted me." "No, they did not. You wanted a fight and you picked the weakest people in the room. That is not honor. That is just being a bully." The word bully did not translate well. The universal translator tried several versions before giving up and using the closest equivalent, which meant something like one who fights without reason. It was not quite right, but it was close enough. His eyes narrowed. Behind him, his 2 companions moved apart, spreading out to surround the human. They were still smiling, but their smiles had become sharper, more dangerous. "You know what I am?" asked. Big said, "Ugly, drunk, should I keep going?" "I am. My people have fought wars since before your species learned to walk upright. We have conquered worlds, destroyed armies, and broken empires. Our children learned to fight before they learned to speak. There is nothing in this galaxy that we fear." Okay. And you are human, a soft, weak, short-lived creature from a small planet that nobody had heard of until 30 years ago. You have no claws, no armor, no venom. Your teeth are flat. Your skin tears like paper. I could kill you with one hand tied behind my back. Probably, agreed, but you would have to catch me first. Appeared at his side. She did not say anything, but her presence changed the situation. Now there were 2 humans against 3. The odds were still terrible, but they were slightly less terrible than before. 2 humans, said, noticing her. How nice. I was worried I would not have enough entertainment for all of us. Walk away, said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were hard. Station security is coming. This does not have to get worse. Security, you think I am afraid of security, laughed, and the sound shook the air. I have killed security officers on a dozen stations. They are nothing to me, less than nothing. He took a step toward, and the floor groaned under his weight. But you interest me, human. You know you cannot win. You know I will hurt you, yet you stand there anyway. Why? Thought about the question. It was a good question. He did not have a good answer. Because someone has to, he said finally. Someone has to. Has to what? Die uselessly, make a pointless gesture. Someone has to stand up to people like you. Someone has to say no. If nobody does, then people like you win. And I am really tired of people like you winning. Stared at him for a long moment. Something flickered in those red eyes. Not respect exactly, more like recognition. Like he was seeing something he had not expected to see. You are either very brave or very stupid, said. Probably both, admitted. Around them, the cantina remained frozen. The other customers had backed away, pressing themselves against the walls. The bartender was still behind the bar, his 4 hands gripping the counter like he was afraid he might float away. The injured's companions had gathered around him, trying to stop the blue blood that was still leaking from his cracked shell. Time seemed to slow down. Could hear his own heartbeat, fast and loud in his ears. He could feel the adrenaline starting to flow, that ancient chemical that had kept his ancestors alive on a hostile world. His hands were shaking slightly, but not from fear, from readiness. His body knew what was coming even if his mind did not want to accept it. I am going to enjoy this, said. I doubt it, replied. Swung. His lower right arm moved first, coming around in a wide arc that should have taken his head off. It was fast, faster than something that big should be able to move. Any normal person would have died in that moment. But was not normal, not anymore. The adrenaline had kicked in fully now, flooding his system with chemicals that they did not have. Time seemed to stretch. The giant's fist moved through the air like it was swimming through honey, saw it coming, tracked its path, and moved. He ducked. The fist passed over his head, missing by centimeters. Felt the wind of its passage ruffle his hair. He heard grunt in surprise. And then, because he was a human, and humans did not know when to quit, punched the warrior in the stomach. It was like punching a wall. Pain exploded through his hand, and he knew immediately that he had broken at least 2 fingers. But he had also done something that no one in the cantina expected. He had fought back. The room seemed to take a breath. The other 2 moved forward, ready to tear the human apart. Stepped sideways, putting a table between herself and the nearest one. Her knife was in her hand now, small and useless looking against monsters made of stone. Looked down at his stomach where it hit him. There was no mark, no damage. The punch had done nothing. But something had changed in the warrior's eyes. Interesting, said softly, very interesting. Then he smiled, and the fight truly began. The fight lasted 2 minutes and 37 seconds. Later, when station security reviewed the footage, they would watch it over and over again. They would share it with military experts across the Galactic Union. They would write reports and analyses and academic papers about what they saw. But in the moment, there was only chaos. Attacked with all 4 arms at once. 2 fists came down from above while 2 more swung in from the sides. It was a move designed to crush enemies completely, leaving no room for escape. Against most species, it would have been instantly fatal. Threw himself forward toward instead of away. The fists passed behind him, hitting only air. His shoulder slammed into this midsection, which was like hitting a concrete pillar. Pain shot through his body, but he ignored it. Pain was just information. Pain could be dealt with later. He grabbed a bottle from a nearby table and smashed it across his face. The glass shattered harmlessly against the stone skin. It did nothing, but the alcohol inside the bottle splashed into his eyes, and those eyes were not protected by stone. They were soft and wet, just like human eyes. Roared and stumbled backward, his upper hands clawing at his burning eyes. Blue Venusian whiskey, noticed. 90% alcohol, perfect for starting fires or blinding giant rock monsters. Behind him was fighting her own battle. The second, slightly smaller than but still twice her size, was trying to grab her. She was not trying to hurt him. She knew that was impossible. Instead, she was using the cantina's furniture as obstacles, keeping tables and chairs between them. When he swung, she ducked. When he charged, she moved aside and let him crash into something solid. She was buying time. They both were. Security would arrive eventually. They just had to survive until then. The third came at from the side. He did not see the attack coming. 4 massive arms wrapped around him from behind, lifting him off the ground and squeezing. His ribs creaked under the pressure. Air rushed out of his lungs and would not come back in. This was it, thought. This was how he died. Crushed by a monster in a bar on a space station 1,000 light years from home. Not a great ending, but not the worst one either. At least he had tried. At least he had stood up. Then something strange happened. His body refused to give up. Millions of years of evolution had prepared humans for moments like this. When death was certain, when escape was impossible, something deep in the human brain activated. Survival instincts that predated language, that predated civilization, that came from a time when humans were prey animals on a dangerous world. Bit down on this arm. His teeth were not sharp. They were flat and weak, designed for eating plants and cooked meat. But his jaw muscles could generate almost 900 newtons of force, and he put every bit of that force into this bite. His teeth scraped against the stone skin, finding the tiny gaps between the rock plates, digging into the softer tissue beneath. The screamed and dropped him. Hit the ground hard. His ankle twisted under him, and he felt something tear, more pain to ignore. He rolled to the side just as this foot came down where his head had been. On the other side of the room had found a metal tray. She was using it like a shield, blocking the second's attacks while looking for an opening. The creature was getting frustrated, his swings becoming wilder and less controlled. Had cleared his eyes now. They were red and swollen, filled with rage. He charged it like a boulder rolling downhill. Grabbed a chair, not to block because nothing could block that much force. He threw it at its feet instead. The chair broke into pieces against the warrior's shins, but it tangled in his legs just enough to make him stumble. Fell forward, his massive body crashing into a table. The table exploded into splinters. The floor cracked under the impact. Did not waste the opportunity. He jumped onto his back and wrapped his arms around the thick neck. It was like hugging a tree trunk, but he held on with everything he had. Tried to shake him off. He spun in circles, smashed his back against the wall, reached over his shoulders with all 4 arms, but held on. His muscles screamed in protest. His broken fingers sent lightning bolts of pain up his arm. Blood from a cut on his forehead dripped into his eyes. He held on anyway. This was what humans did. This was their secret weapon. Not strength, not speed, not claws or venom or armor. Persistence, stubbornness, the absolute refusal to accept defeat even when defeat was the only logical outcome. Had found her opening. When the second overextended on a wild swing, she darted in and drove her knife into his knee joint. The blade was small, meant for cutting emergency straps on cargo ships, but the knee joint was one of the few weak points on a body where the stone plates did not quite meet. The warrior screamed and collapsed. The third, the one had bitten, was nursing his wounded arm. Human saliva, it turned out, contained bacteria that even immune systems had never encountered. The bite was already swelling, turning an ugly purple color. Finally managed to reach. His upper right hand grabbed the human by the jacket and tore him off, throwing him across the room. Flew through the air and crashed into the bar, shattering glasses and bottles. He landed on the floor in a pile of broken glass and spilled alcohol. Everything hurt. Everything was broken. He could not feel his left arm. His vision was going dark around the edges. But he was still conscious. He was still alive. And somewhere in the distance, he could hear the sound of security alarms finally approaching. He smiled through bloody teeth. They had done it. They had survived. Station security arrived in force. 20 officers in heavy armor, carrying weapons that could stop a charging vehicle. They found a cantina that looked like a bomb had gone off inside it. Broken furniture everywhere. Alcohol and blood mixing on the floor. Holes in the walls where bodies had been thrown. And in the middle of it all, 2 humans and 3 warriors. Was on his knees, still blinded by the alcohol that had been thrown in his eyes. His pride was hurt worse than his body. He had fought in 100 battles, killed enemies on a dozen worlds, and he had just been held off by creatures half his size with no weapons and no armor. The second could not stand. His knife had done something to his knee that would require surgery to fix. He sat against the wall, making sounds that the translator could not process. The third was in the worst shape of all. The bite on his arm had swollen to twice its normal size. Human bacteria, unfamiliar to his immune system, were having a party inside his body. He would spend the next week in the medical bay, fighting an infection that his doctors had never seen before. Was behind the bar, lying in a pool of broken glass. 3 of his ribs were cracked. His ankle was badly sprained. 2 fingers on his right hand were broken. He had a concussion that would keep him in bed for days. His entire body was covered in cuts and bruises. He was also laughing. Sat beside him holding a bag of ice to her swollen eye. Her knife was gone, lost somewhere in the chaos. Her clothes were torn and stained with blue blood. She was laughing too. "We are insane," she said. "Completely insane," agreed. "We could have died. We probably should have died. Next time, we are running away." "Sure, next time." They both knew there would be a next time, and they both knew they would probably do the same stupid thing again. The security officers took the warriors away in restraints, was still shouting threats, promising revenge, swearing that he would find the humans and make them pay. Nobody was listening. The footage from the cantina's cameras had already been sent to the station commander, who had sent it to the sector governor, who had sent it to the Galactic Union Council. Within hours, the entire galaxy would know what had happened. The one had thrown across the room, came to see the humans before the medical team took them away. His shell had been repaired with temporary patches, and blue blood still stained his gray exoskeleton. But he was alive. Because of them, he was alive. "Why?" he asked, his translator struggling to express his confusion. "We are nothing to you. Our species have never met before. We have no alliance, no trade agreements, no shared history. Why would you risk your lives for strangers?" Thought about the question. He had been thinking about it since the fight began. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said finally, "and because those guys were being mean to you. But the odds were against you. The logical choice was to do nothing." "Humans are not very logical," said. "We do stupid things all the time. We climb mountains that want to kill us. We explore oceans that can crush us. We go to space even though space is constantly trying to murder us. We are not smart creatures. We just do not know how to quit. The Santini moved in a pattern that might have been confusion or wonder. My people gave up violence 1,000 years ago, he said. We evolved beyond it. We thought it made us civilized. Now I wonder if we just became victims waiting to happen. Violence is not always the answer, said, but sometimes it is the only answer. The trick is knowing the difference. The medical team arrived and began loading onto a stretcher. Everything hurt, and the painkillers they gave him were making his head fuzzy. But before they took him away, he had one more thing to say. Tell the other what happened here. Tell them that humans will stand with them. We are new to this galaxy and we do not have much, but we know how to fight, and we know how to protect our friends. The footage from the Starlight Cantina spread across the Galactic Union faster than anyone expected. Military analysts watched it hundreds of times, studying how the humans moved and fought. Scientists wrote papers about human adrenaline, that strange chemical that turned soft creatures into temporary monsters. Politicians debated what it meant for the balance of power in the galaxy. The conclusion was troubling to many species. Humans were still weak. They were still fragile and short-lived and technologically primitive. But they had something that most species had lost long ago. They had the willingness to fight even when winning was impossible. They had the stubbornness to get up after being knocked down over and over again until either they won or they died. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the or the fastest or the most advanced, but they might be the most dangerous. Because you could not predict what they would do, you could not scare them into submission, and you could never, ever count them out. The Starlight Cantina reopened 2 weeks later after repairs were finished. The owner, who had been tending bar for 60 years, put up a new sign above the door. It said, "Humans welcome, everyone else behave yourselves." Nobody argued with that sign. Nobody dared to. And somewhere on a small cargo ship flying through the asteroid belt, and were already arguing about their next job. They were still covered in bandages. They were still healing from their injuries, and they were still ready to do something stupid at a moment's notice. That was just who they were. That was who all humans were. And the galaxy was finally starting to understand that.